Thank you so much for having me. It is a true honor to be here and to see the amazing work that Oak has done and the tremendous number of organic farmers in Kentucky. So I'm going to share a little bit about my experience in Oklahoma growing our fertility with cover crops. I'm going to take you a little bit through the journey of our farm and the process that we've gone through thinking about our inputs and how they play out in terms of fertility management. I'll also share with you a little bit about our cover crop story through photos and follow the transition from the beginning of a season through the end of a year, both with the crops, cash crops that we grow, and the cover crops. All right, so we have 21 acres and we've got about 2.5 or 3 in annuals, and the rest is in a rotational cover crop period. So it's basically the same amount of land that we have in cash crops dedicated to a fallow cover crop year. So that year is not growing anything but cover crops. Got about 1 acre in perennials, and then about 2 acres between our house, barn, roads, and 2 hoop houses. And then the balance is about 13 acres that's in wildlife habitat and wildflower plots. We are very intentionally a 2-person farm. We don't have any hired labor because we are not good managers, and there are a number of other reasons for that. But primarily it allows us to, in essence, take the full profit from the farm between the 2 of us, rather than having to create an income that can support a good staff and provide people with a living wage. It is our full-time income, and we don't have off-farm jobs. We've got about a 350 member CSA over a roughly 20-week period of harvesting from mid to late April through Labor Day weekend. And we always stop that Labor Day weekend for our cover crop production. Our income might seem a little bit low or crazy to share, but our gross is $90,000 and we net about $70,000. And we are starting our 23rd season this year. Just one thing to note about the income is that because of our intentional taking of time off for our winter period, we basically have the months of October, November, December, and January totally farm free, with, of course, projects that we've put off during the main season, like tractor oil changes, etc., kind of filling in the gaps when we feel a need to get something done. And we also have about February and March and most of September as very, very, very part-time. So although that income might seem shockingly low, it isn't for 365 days of crazy busy farming. And it is a number that is what we need. For us, we've determined, that time is more valuable. So in terms of our goals, we want to stay economically viable for 2 full-time farmers. We want to be as small as possible while still making a simple living, as I just mentioned. In terms of our environmental responsibility, for us, that means limiting external inputs and not using any animal products on our farm. So we'd say we grow about 90% of our fertility at this point, maybe 90% plus. And our other goal is to achieve a restful off season in the winter to rest both our soils and our souls. So we've always been concerned about using animal manure because we understand the implications that it can have on waterways. We live along a very pristine Ozark stream that is increasingly threatened by confined animal feeding operations, primarily poultry operations. And, unless you are producing livestock yourself and doing rotational grazing, all manure that's used in agricultural fertility comes from CAFOs because, nobody's going around scooping up individual cow patties. And we just felt like that conflict of using manure from CAFOs was giving the chicken industry, in our region at least, a place for its waste product. So on this slide, you can see these really gigantic chicken houses, and these are the poultry feeding operations that have really started to invade our area starting in 2018. These are aerial photos of houses from our region. So these are not too far from our farm. There are 50,000 birds per house, and they have about 6 cycles of birds per year, or not 6 cycles, every 6 to 8 weeks, excuse me. So that's a lot of chickens in one small region of our state. And with the increased houses came increased litter. And we just really had to ask ourselves, if that was something we wanted to support. So basically, our journey from CAFO manure to cover crops for fertility begins when we bought our farm in 2006. We had only 5 pounds of nitrogen to the acre in our soils. We have very ancient, very weathered, some might say worn out soils. We did not get any alluvial deposits of the glaciers that made their way through most of the Midwestern region. And we've always cover cropped from the very first fall that we bought our farm. But because of that low nitrogen that was initially present, we did use chicken manure because it was cheap, it was available. It was the only thing available. We didn't have compost at that time near our area or anywhere within a drivable or deliverable distance. So initially we applied chicken litter to all the fields for the first 2 years, and then we alternated every other field for the next 6 years with decreasing amounts of litter applied over the years. And then starting in 2016, we stopped using any manure on the farm. So in 2016, we did apply lime for our naturally acidic soils, which are about a 5.5 in their pH. In 2017 and 2018, we applied organic fertilizer mixes based on our soil test results. But by 2019, we became concerned that we'd essentially replaced chicken manure with mined nutrients and different byproducts of the CAFO industry, like feather meal and bone meal, and felt like we were getting stuck into this, give your soil test to the experts and have them tell you what nutrients you need and from which sources mentality. And so from starting in 2019, we applied pelleted soybean meal only for fertility, and that was primarily for nitrogen. And we did that again in 2020. But by 2021 and 2022, we realized we really didn't need to apply that soybean meal on the entire farm. And we started growing almost all the veggies only on cover crop residue. So we side dressed soybean meal on some of our longer term summer crops that we thought might need the extra boost of the soybean meal for nitrogen fertility since they're just in the ground for so long. But the rest of the farm is sourcing its NPK and micronutrients solely from the cover crops and the nutrients already applied over the previous seasons. And in 2023, 24, and 25, we did no side dressing in the field at all. So 100% of everything in the field was grown from the cover crop fertility. But yeah, we've been for the last 3 years and now again this year, just growing on the cover crop residue. So yeah,
it'll be our 11th season of no animal manure, our 8th of no animal byproducts, and our 6th of no imported NPK. So this is our cover crop rotation, and everybody's situation is so different. And I just want to say, like, we are totally not even remotely close to expert in anything that we do. I mean, we make so many mistakes, as I think that's part of farming. Although sometimes we're like, do we have to make this same mistake this many times? And yes, we do. Like, we're like, oh, we forgot that lesson and we're making this mistake again. But we have two main cover crop seasons, like our fall, winter, and then our summer. So right now, the whole farm is in this fall, winter cover crop, which is oats, rye, depends kind of on when we get to plant it, vetch, daikon, like the tillage radish, and mustard. That we sow ideally in September, although the last 2 years we've had crazy droughts in the fall. And so now we're having to like rethink our cover crop mix because we might have to start moving towards more rye and less oats because the oats need to go in sooner. The rye can go in later and like germinate, get some growth even in cold weather and do fine. But usually the oats will winter kill in December and the rye and the vetch will keep going. So the summer cover crop is sorghum Sudan grass, sun hemp, sunflowers, cowpeas, safflower, and soybeans. And those we plant just where our spring crops have ended and where we have like our fallow area, like the part of the farm that's in rest. And that's what this kind of describes. So if, for example, our field, let's say we have our spring cash crop field, that's going to go to a summer cover crop and then a fall winter cover crop in that year. Then the next year that area is going to be just in cover crop, ideally, just to regenerate the soil, regenerate, microorganisms that are not getting tilled, not getting messed with. Then the year 3, it would go to a summer cash crop, like, tomatoes, whatever, because our seasons are really pretty equally divided between spring and summer crops, to the fall, winter cover crop again, back to another year of fallow, and then back to spring cash crops. So it's getting both like a fallow in cover crops and it's getting rotation. Any questions so far? Do we harvest any of the oats for our cover crop or any of the other items? No. So the cover crop is like a green manure. If we harvest anything from it, we're extracting nutrients, in that harvested crop. So we're really just growing it to till back into the soil. And our neighbor's always like, I've got some sheep that could come out there and eat that for you. But we really are just growing it. Once it starts to flower or tiller and starts acting like it wants to make a seed, that's when we mow it down. But I have pictures of that later. Yes? Yeah, probably like the first 12-ish inches are like a gravelly silt loam. I know we have great soil. And then after that, it's clay. It's just like, it's not good soil. I mean, it's not some place somebody would like think, heck yes, I want to have a vegetable farm there, but we don't have it. We had like the cheapest budget possible for land, and so we couldn't afford really great soil, but we wanted water, and we didn't want it to be too steep because we get crazy rains. So yeah, we don't have great soil. So now, yeah. Say that one more time. Based on our soil type, what's our best cover crop? Yeah. We've experimented with growing like just one cover crop, like just cowpeas. I mean, we grew just Austrian winter peas one spring, and just out of curiosity, took a soil test right after, and it had like 200 pounds of nitrogen to the acre just from the Austrian winter peas. But we are trying to, deal to some extent with that hard clay that's underneath, but also just recognizing like there's only so much that we can do with that. Over time, it's definitely improved, but that's why we're trying to get like deep roots. And ask me that question in a minute with the sorghum Sudan grass, because that definitely helps. And the tillage radish is also important for that. If you get a really good deep root, you get that nice cavity once the radish itself has died from cold. So you get water penetration, you get air penetration. But we're not growing those mixes necessarily based on our soil so much as diversity. The mustard is like as a biofumigant. Like each one of those things we're doing for a different purpose, if that makes sense. Okay, and yes, yeah. Can you yell it for me? Because okay, that's a good, yes, thank you. It's not fallow, like there's always a cover crop on it. By fallow, I mean like not having a cash crop on it. I need to come up with a better word because you're not the only. Yeah, so the question was, how do we decide like what to leave fallow and not plant a cover crop? But that's my bad terminology or my not getting good language. Everything has either a cash crop or a cover crop on it at all times. Yeah. Was there another question back there? Yeah. So when we stopped using chicken litter, did we see lower yields or lower productivity? And that's the crazy thing. We didn't. And like we never have throughout this entire experience. Like part of why I put the photos at the beginning of like our crops for you to see, like there are some red peppers and some a butterhead lettuce and cauliflowers. Like that's just what the crops look like. I think they look pretty good. And no, we haven't seen any kind of reduction in yield. If anything, we've just seen an increase. So this is kind of, I'm going to start you through a little journey of the fields as they would look now when the snow finally melts and we finally get a little warmth, because we also have a ton of snow. It was like I had to have like Mike help me get out of our driveway to get here. But this is sort of like February-ish. It depends every year on the weather, but the vetch is going to really start to take off. And that's what we love, because it just sits there sort of dormant over the winter, and then it starts to grow really, really rapidly. And all it takes is a little bit of warmth. So it was planted, if you remember, like back in September or whenever, we were able to, and it just starts emerging and forming this incredible carpet over the course of the spring. So this is at this point at the beginning of March, we're not planting anything in the field yet. We're starting to think about it. Like ideally, we'd start tilling and making beds in the middle to end of March. But again, it just depends on the weather, because sometimes it's too wet or too cold or like even too dry. Thanks to climate change, it's really hard to predict. Questions yet? Yep. Yeah, so that other one was, yeah. So that was oats that died back. And then the vetch is what's taking off. And even the daikon radish and the mustard have died. It's really just now vetch come spring. And then this, though, is a case where the oats didn't winter kill, which is crazy. And we try to get, there are different oat varieties, like there are forage oats that will go through the winter a lot better that like deer hunters use. There are all different types of oats that you can use. Rye is great, but it's also super tricky to kill in the spring, and it can become kind of a weed crop. So we love oats more. And this is a year where, yeah, they didn't winter kill, and this is in March, and that's, our young child at the time playing with her horse. But that just gives you a little sense of the height. That's kind of why it's in there. So you can see how tall it is by March. And then this is the same month, but a different year when the oats have died. And this is the veg just like, you can kind of see it's getting a little bit thicker, a little more lush. There might be like the odd mustard or radish or whatever that like didn't germinate in the fall and winter, or that survived the winter and that will send up a stalk. But this is what it's starting to look like as we're getting ready to plant. Any questions yet? Okay, so then this is what happens when we take that same field, and you can kind of see on the right-hand side, that's the vetch growing. Then you can see where we've mowed it, and then you can see on the left-hand side where we've like tilled it and made beds. And we usually wait about like a week, 2 weeks from mowing it and tilling it to making a bed. And we use a rototiller. Do we do shallow till or do we till? So our rototiller is about 4 inches. We can adjust the depth. We can make it less deep, but yeah, for the thing about cover crop residue when you're actually trying to till it in is there is so much vegetative matter, and it's a tricky thing. Our goal for this year, which I'll get to, is to have like kind of a new frontier on preparing the beds. So this year we will experiment with just using a disc, which is going to come up in just a second for you, but avoiding the rototiller if we can at the beginning of spring. So basically our philosophy is like keep it covered, mow it, till it, make beds, and plant. But this was, last year experimenting with disking rather than rototilling. And we've been doing that over the last several years, and we're finding it pretty effective, especially in the spring, because it keeps like the soil chunks a little bit thicker, and it also opens up the soil for releasing moisture, which can be a problem for us in the spring, like the soils are too wet. And it's also just not as like pulverizing as the rototiller. So this year, in an ideal world, we will disc it, and then we will use a skim cultivator, which I've got a picture of in a minute, and we will make beds and not use the rototiller. But this is just our ideal world, and I have no idea how it's going to pan out when it's time to actually go out and try it. And it all depends on the weather. Any questions yet? Raising the bed. We use a bed maker behind the tractor, and yeah, so this year we're not gonna make beds. I know, we're gonna try not employing the bed maker, because you're right, like that is the trickiest part. The next tricky part is getting a soil seed bed that's fine enough to get the seeder through. And that is like kind of the holy grail. If people have ideas, I definitely want to hear it. We have a culti-packer that a friend gave us that we'll probably use too. So we'll just see. Any other questions so far? Yep. Yeah, we have a chisel plow. I'm not as much of a fan of it as Mike is. I mean, he likes the ripper because he feels like that, down after a foot, those however many feet we have of clay really needs a ripper or a chisel plow. But I'm thinking if he were here, this would be perfect, because this is like where we end up having our like biggest clashes is like what to till, what to plant, like what what equipment to use. I'm thinking that we might be doing like more harm than good. And we've been using it for almost 20 years now, and I'm not sure that it's as effective. But it does help with drainage. I'm not gonna lie. We also put in drainage tiles a few years ago, which was like an amazing change to the soil in terms of moisture retention in the spring. Okay, so we actually, oh yeah, sorry, did somebody say something? Nope, okay. So this is kind of hard to see because I didn't do a good job of taking a picture of last year's rye growing back. So in the far left corner, like behind that hoop house, that is the winter cover crop of rye and vetch growing back. And the front is like wheat that we experimented with for actually harvesting and eating. But if you want to try to harvest that wheat by hand, that's crazy. And our friends did it, but they were like, this is too much. This is too much to harvest. So yeah, in the far back, this is by mid-April. You can kind of see what the rye is starting to do. And this is more of like an up close of that. So this is early May. The rye is starting to set seed or tiller, and we do not want that because that's when, you know, all the nutrients start going into the seed, and we don't want seeds in the soil either. So this is mowing it down, but this isn't because we're going to be planting a cash crop here. It's just that we are like nurturing this cover crop that we've already grown and that we've already put our money into to like get as much growth and regrowth out of it as we can. So this is what the crop residue looks like in mid-May after we've mowed that like rye vetch regrowth and are getting ready to plant summer crops into that. Does that make sense? Okay. And then in the back, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Have we tried crimping? So have we ever tried crimping when like mowing down or laying down a cover crop for a fallow period? We haven't, which is a really interesting question. Part of why we haven't crimped is that by this point, you know, we're getting close to actually planting the summer cover crop once this growth has happened. And with some crops like rye, it's super hard to get them to stop wanting to make a seed, even if they're lying flat. They're like, oh, I don't care. I'm gonna pop back up and I'm still gonna make a seed because they are like determined little plants. In the summertime, we don't do it because we're just maximizing the amount of vegetative growth that we can get. But ask me that again when you see the summer one. Maybe at some point it'll feel like the right mix, but typically what we're wanting to do is mow it and then encourage regrowth. Yeah? Do we struggle with volunteers, like when we're going from a cover crop field into the cash crop that year? We don't. I think most of the seeds have germinated, and the only tricky part would be rye if it doesn't want to die. But if you get it at the right point when it's tillering, it doesn't really have enough energy, and it's like physiologically at a place where it's like kind of done and it won't try to tiller again. So this is me like using a jab planter. But in the background, that is that same patch of mowed rye and vetch that's growing back by early June. And the reason that I'm showing you this is that, you know, that's like a section of our summer field that we knew we weren't gonna plant. And so it was like too early for our summer cover crop to get planted, but the fall cover crop or winter cover crop was still going strong. Okay, so this is like my last photo of spring residue of the winter cover crop. So up there on the right, You can see what looks kind of like mowed grass or mulch. This is actually like in August when we're super dry, but that is the vetch cover crop that got mowed like back in May and has still maintained its structure and its vegetative matter and has been acting as this mulch, even though it's brown. But like, look, there are no weeds in there. Isn't that crazy? Like, and I think that's because, weeds come up when you have bare soil because nature does not like that vacuum of no soil coverage. But since it's getting shaded, and there is this protective coating of vegetative matter, no weeds grew in that. And that's been our experience with mowed vetch. And that was just a small section that like never got the summer cover crop planted into it. But yeah, it really can hold up well, even though you would think vetch wouldn't have such like hardy stalks. You would think it would break down. Any questions so far? Okay, so this is a super old John Deere grain drill from the 40s that we bought for like $400 at just like a used tractor place. And this is what we use to plant our cover crop. And this is the like summer cover crop going into a freshly prepared field that was the spring cash crops. Does that make sense? So what you see here is a bunch of bare soil right before we're getting ready to plant this cover crop. Sorry, my brain cells are not there. That's coming up later. But yeah, this is like a very vulnerable time because we have heavy rains potentially at this time of year, and we don't have any cover going on. So we want this to happen over like as short a time period as possible. So this is what the summer cover crop looks like kind of close up as it's starting to grow. You can see the sorghum Sudan grass, the sun hemp, the soybeans and cowpeas, but it's kind of hard to see some of the other stuff like the safflower. Some of those things, even though they're in that mix, they're not really growing abundantly, but they're there for diversity. They're there for the diversity for soil microorganisms, just for beneficial insects. Yep. How do we determine the ratio of seeds in the cover crop mix? Well, that's a good question. Our cover crop purveyor helps us determine that. And we tell the guy we've been working with for a super long time, like what we want. And he'll often even recommend additional things or tell us, hey, like, we've had really good luck with this, so you should try it. And they do the ratio for us, knowing they know what we want. So if we had to do it ourselves, it would probably be a little trickier, trying to figure out, like, you don't want too much sorghum Sudan grass because then it's going to shade out the sun hemp or, the sunflowers. Yeah, sorry, that's not a really helpful answer. But the people that sell good cover crop mixes are really good at helping determine. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, we get our fall winter cover crop from Welter Seed and Honey in Iowa. They are amazing, and they are one of like the first folks who were selling certified organic cover crop seed. And then we get our summer cover crop from Green Cover Seed in Kansas. So this is just to kind of show you what that cover crop of, sorghum Sudan grass, etc., looks like in late July. What's amazing about this cover crop is it can almost grow on dew. Like, we can get tons of rain in the summer, we can get no rain in the summer. But as long as there's just enough soil moisture to germinate this cover crop, it is extremely drought tolerant and will get super tall regardless of the weather. So this is after 2 months of growth and before mowing. And I don't know if you can see, there's like little patches of yellow, and that's the sun hemp that's starting to flower. So, every year is a little bit different. This is from last year. You can see a few of the sorghum Sudan grass plants starting to put up stalks. And once we start to see that, we know, like, okay, game's over. It's time to mow it down. Some years it's really crazy tall, and my daughter was like, please put a picture of me on my horse in there. And as I was telling some other folks, I was like, I'll never have horses, never. And then there it is. Anyway, it can be like 10 feet tall, which is not actually a good thing necessarily, because we have broken a brush hog on it before. So yeah, I mean, it becomes like a jungle in there when you're mowing it all down, which is awesome and amazing, but also can be tricky because that's a lot of organic matter. Questions so far? Okay, yes. So yeah, she's saying based on like our weather, how does that impact the timing of when we plant it, and also like, you know, growth and decomposition, and does it get brown if it doesn't rain? And the amazing thing about sorghum Sudan grass is it really, I mean, we've never had an experience where we've gone like 3 months with 0 drops of rain, but if it gets like a tenth of an inch, it will be shocking, like how it will respond. And so it doesn't ever really get brown, but it will stay shorter stature if we're in a drought period. Like, it'll get to like 5 or 6 feet tall instead of 8 or 10. Other questions? Yeah. When do we plant our summer cover crop? We plant it like end of June, beginning of July, just depending again on the weather. Because like if it hasn't rained, we're not gonna plant it because it's not going anywhere. But if there's like no hope of rain, like that can definitely affect it. But we just want to get it in the ground. The sooner we can, the better. So we actually have started timing like our spring crops and where we plant them. Like some of our spring crops, like potatoes or onions or carrots, we actually plant on the summer side because they're going through the summer still. Even though like we think of them as spring crops, they're still in the field. So we chop those guys out of our spring cash crop field and put them in our summer cash crop field so that spring cash crop field can get the summer cover crop. Oh my gosh. Say that 5 times fast. Okay, there was another question. Yep. Do we have situations when the cover crop gets that tall and we have babies and animals in there? And yes, it is like Watership Down. It's awful but true. Yeah, like you can have a cover crop for a month and it becomes habitat. And that is probably like the hardest part for me. I don't mow that because I don't want to see it and I will cry. And what's amazing though is that it's mostly like frogs, leopard frogs. I can tell you like everything that's jumping out, and voles are pretty good at jumping out of the way. And then eventually when there's like just like one strip of cover crop left, like they'll just scurry into the fields outside of it. I mean, we have killed a turtle once. And yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it does become habitat for sure. And that is an unfortunate reality. Yeah. Any other questions?
Have you tried using a flail mower as opposed to a rotary mower?
Yes, yes, yes. Have we tried using a flail mower as opposed to like a brush hog or rotary mower? Yes. So we use the flail mower always on like the vetch, anything that we are about to try to till in to plant. we have to use the flail mower because it's the only thing that'll chop it up small enough. But with the size of this cover crop, we've learned that if we start out with the flail mower, it's just too much. So we start out with the brush hog, and then we'll come in later with regrowth with the flail mower. Any other questions? I know you have a question. Yes, yes. Yeah, have we seen increased soil depth because of building up? Yes. Okay. I would say yes, we have. Like the biggest thing that we've noticed is difference in the texture, like way better water penetration, just more friable, like less crazy kind of clay sandy looking. But we also are in a super hot and potentially super wet climate, and they eat the heck out of that cover crop. The soil microorganisms make it super hard to build up soil organic matter, even with all that cover crop. One more question in the back. Yep. So how do we incorporate it based on different types of cover crops? Yeah, so that's actually great because that is just about to come up here. So I'm going to answer that with these pictures. So this is, doing this rough mowing again with like a brush hog. And then this is what it looked like after the brush hog. So it looks kind of dead, right? Like there's a lot of organic matter, but it's slowly starting to grow back. So this is early September when we've mowed it down. And then this is just a few weeks later, like that. And we had no rain here. So this is that summer cover crop that is now, it's mainly the sorghum Sudan grass at this point that's trying to grow back. But that's, theoretically supposed to encourage more root growth, back to your question in terms of, trying to get the right cover crop for our soil. And part of why we want to mow it is because we do have that tillage or that clay sort of subsurface. So we want to encourage as much underground growth with the roots as we do get with the above ground growth. Questions? Okay, so this is where I guess like all farmers, we're constantly trying to figure out how to do things better. And this is not better in my opinion because the whole farm is exposed while we're planting that fall winter cover crop, and that sucks because it's super vulnerable to erosion during that time. So again, I wish Mike were here so he could be like, Emily. But all right, so over the last several years, like while driving that grain drill that's planting the cover crop from like one section to the other, I'm going to show you this back picture. We like drive over the little road, which is like just a Bermuda grass road that's in between the two fields. And that never gets tilled, obviously. It's just our driving path. And the cover crop grows amazingly in the road. So I was like, please, Mike, please, 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 let us just try using this 1940s John Deere grain drill. It is not a no-till grain drill. And plow or till directly into that with the grain drill into the summer cover crop. So that's what the summer cover crop residue looked like at the end of October after we mowed it down again and tried to get it really short. And then you can kind of see where we've tilled, and we were like just whatever, gleaning a few last of the summer crops in a few beds for like the food bank. But this is where we experimented with just driving that old grain drill over the summer cover crop residue. I'm sorry, but it worked. So it did fine. It totally has done amazingly well. And I think we were fearful that grain drill just couldn't do it, but it totally has. And this is what it looks like, you know, kind of a few weeks after that planting. And I just have to say, I think next year, I think that we felt convinced, okay, like we can go ahead and not till the summer cover crop at all. We're not going to do that next year. We're going to mow it, let it regrow, mow it, let it regrow, mow it, and plant the fall winter cover crop directly into that residue. And we're taking that same principle and we're going to try to apply that with this, like with the summer cover crop into the spring cash crops, and that like fallow period that's just getting cover crop for the year that has the vetch and rye residue. So who knows? I mean, it's still an experiment, but that is what we're trying. And this is just to kind of show you what the transition looks like. So this is oats in vetch normally in November. And then we do plant cover crops in our high tunnels, both for like crop rotation, but also for disease management. And this mustard has been amazing because we actually brought in fusarium on some compost into this because we do now have compost in our area. And the mustard cover crop is amazing. It's like a biofumigant. Okay, so this is just to kind of answer some of the questions about tillage. So that's our skim cultivator, and that's what we're going to be trying to use after disking, skim cultivating, and then we're going to see if we can plant directly in that or if we're going to need to use a cultipacker. I'm not sure. But we've always mulched in our high tunnels, and we've always said we don't have time to mulch in the field, and we use like a tractor mounted blind cultivator in the back for like 1 and 2 row crops for weed control. But this year we finally mulched like in the field, and we do a space between tomato beds just for ease of harvesting and for like disease control, like airflow. And we liked it so much on the beds that we ultimately actually put it in the entire like cover walk area. And not only did we do it in the walk area, we just ended up mulching like anything that did not have, like that had a soil exposure whatsoever. So all of this eventually got mulched, and it was amazing. Any questions so far? Do we ever use the cover crop as mulch? Oh my gosh, you just read my mind. You just totally read my mind. Okay, so how many people here have heard of Ann and Eric Nordell, Beech Grove Farm in Pennsylvania? They are amazing. They're our heroes. We've like been to their farm. Mike always is like, if we could only be just like them. So they, if you haven't checked out any of their stuff, they are incredible. And they really, I think, pioneered cover cropping, and like they had this whole weed the soil, not the plant philosophy. And we really did establish our farm very much on their practices. And so they ended up experimenting with exactly what we want to experiment with next year, which is, as we were like laying down that mulch in between the tomatoes, I was like, why aren't we just growing that with our cover crop and then mowing it down? So that is what we're going to do this year. So that space between the tomato beds will be, I'm thinking cowpeas, but we'll see. I want it to be hardy enough that we can walk on it, but also I don't obviously want Sudan grass in there because that's like way too tall. I want it to be drought tolerant because it's not going to, we don't irrigate our cover crop ever. We don't have that possibility. And I don't want it to compete with the tomatoes. So they had crazy rain. This is an amazing YouTube video that they have. It's like 7 minutes long. Totally watch it. It's amazing. They had heavy rains. They experienced erosion, and they were like, all right, let's start trying to grow a cover crop in between our beds. And so we are going to try that this year as well. We're going to grow it in what would have been like the furrow of the bed. We're going to grow probably oats, because we have a ton of it sitting in our shed right now. Maybe we'll throw in a legume in there too, but I think probably just oats in the spring. And in all of our 2-row beds, like broccoli, cauliflower, head lettuce, etc., we're going to try growing it in between the rows. So like it would be kind of like 3 rows so that we also have less land exposed. Yeah. So that's definitely a new frontier for us. I'm not sure how that's going to pan out, but I think that you're walking on it so much, and in the spring the crop is in there for such a short period of time that I really don't think it's going to be a big problem. The biggest challenge would be competition with nutrients. Any questions so far? Yeah. What are we currently mulching with? Prairie hay, like a native prairie hay, which again, like I'm like, we just mined somebody else's prairie to mulch our farm. Like, I mean, I know, yeah, with cover crop seed, you're like buying the cover crop seed, but you can't go too crazy, right? Like, yeah. Are we what mulching? Sorry, say that one more time. Are we going to try the living mulch inside the tunnels as well? That's a good question. Probably not this year, because it's going to be such a huge change for us, like mentally and in terms of equipment, that we probably will just start with the field and not do it in the high tunnels. Okay, this next slide is really hard to see, but this is our east field. So we have like 3 different fields. It's our east field soil test results from before we tilled it, right when we bought it in 2006, up until last year. Can you read it in the back? Oh, cool. You guys have amazing eyesight. I do not. So, yeah. Are these slides available after the presentation? Does anyone know? If you want this slide, just if it's not available, or if it's difficult, just email me and you can totally have any of this. Yeah, so maybe I shouldn't even be showing you this, because you might be judging me big time, because our soil organic matter is like 2%. It's a lot better than what it was when we bought it, but it's lower than when we added chicken litter. Like for sure the chicken litter was increasing our soil organic matter. Just like if we added a ton of compost, it would increase it. I mean, the question I have is, how can we grow that much vegetative matter in cover crops and still not see a dramatic increase in organic matter? Is it the tillage? Is it our weather? I actually don't know the answer to that. And so could it be that it's using it more effectively? So we actually got like 2 Haney tests. Are folks familiar with the Haney soil test? It's like this much more kind of in-depth soil health test done. And we got one done in in April, like the 22nd of April, and one like the 23rd of May. And they were like wildly different results for the same exact field. And in April, when the first test was taken, the cover crop was still growing. In May, the cover crop had been tilled in and was being like actively consumed by the soil microorganisms. So it was like incredibly different. And then next week, not in time for this conference, I have a call with the soil Haney test guy. And I'm just like, please help me understand these differences. Yeah? What do I use? Lab. Oh gosh, I was about to tell you. Oh, it's in this area. No. Oh my gosh. No. West Point, Waypoint Analytical. There we go. Sorry, Waypoint Analytical. Yeah, we have used some of those earlier tests though. We only started with Waypoint in 2016. Prior to that, it was all our like cooperative extension agent, and like there's a year where they didn't remember to do like our soil organic matter, and yeah, so there's it is take it as you will, but this is like a screenshot in time, and I put the date when we took the soil test because I also was wondering, like, was there a correlation between when we took it and the organic matter or the nutrients? I mean, kind of a hard call to tell, but I think what's interesting is if you look at 2024, can you guys read the number for nitrogen? Is that for real? So I'm totally not a soil scientist. I don't want to denigrate the science, but I also think that there's a little bit of voodoo magic to your soil test. And really, like, the proof is in the pudding. Are your crops healthy? Are you having to apply a ton of like pesticides because you're getting invasions? Are your yields good? Like, and so that is like my bigger metric than this. Okay, I'm gonna leave this slide up. I have one more slide with my email on it, but now is the time for like questions and only questions. So yeah, I'm done blabbing about all of this and jump away. Yeah.
Just on this slide with the pH, did you do something like the 6.6 were getting worried about getting too high and it went down? I've never experienced my pH going down. I've gotten close to 7 and sort of worried about it. What happened there, do you know?
Yeah, so actually, we did add lime, which increases our soil pH in a few of those years, but also I have no idea how it managed to go up so high with just a small amount of lime. At this point, I have no idea how it went from 5.5 to 6.1 because there is no lime there. There's like, I mean, that's why I'm talking about a little bit of voodoo magic here. Like, we did not do anything differently, but yet our pH went up. Yeah, in the back. So microphones? Oh, sorry, yes.
Pest, are you seeing a lower pest rate?
Yeah, okay. First of all, I just want everyone to knock on some wood. Have you guys ever had blister beetles? Oh my gosh. Okay, so 2011 and 2012 were incredibly dry and hot years for us. There was like a point in the summer where we were like hotter than the Sahara Desert. Like we went to the farmer's market and put corn down on, the pavement for just a few minutes and it started steaming at like 5 a.m. So it was a crazy hot year. And we did get this crazy, insane invasion of blister beetles. They have an aggregating pheromone that they send out and they come from miles. So like the trees had turned brown in the summer, like everything was brown. And they're like, oh, look at this green farm that we can come and eat. And I, for the first time, understood pesticides because I was like, if it would just rain Pyganic, it would be amazing. Luckily, like if that had happened a third year, I don't know if I would be standing here because it felt so horrible. Like, what are we doing wrong? Like, we're terrible farmers. Since then, and anything can happen because they come in cycles and they feed on grasshopper larvae. Sorry, it is like that scary. Like I have PTSD from that experience. No, we have been amazingly low in needs for applying any kind of pesticides. Like, I don't even think we applied anything to Colorado potato beetles, which are typically like the one thing that we have a really hard time controlling. Like usually we have to at least spray them once on the potatoes, but I haven't done my organic application yet, but I am pretty sure we didn't spray them this year. So yeah, no, I feel like amazingly enough, like pests are going down, disease is going down. But that's the deer. Well, so we have like one of those crazy deer fences that cost like $15,000, but it works and it's like lifetime guarantee.
Here's a question over here. So here's a comment on, here's an experimental thing.
Yeah.
So on carbon building up in the soil, if you look at humus across all ecosystems, there's a ratio between carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. So if you, when you're incorporating your green manure, you add about 10 pounds of sulfur and phosphorus and about 50 pounds of nitrogen, you can actually increase organic more than no-till.
You know, I think that there's a lot to be said for incorporating a cover crop, because if you don't incorporate it, you do just get like breakdown on the surface of the soil. So it's a balance. And I do actually think there's a place for tillage in organic farming for sure. It's like the organic farmer's weed control, basically. Like without it, it would be, weeds would build up. I mean, our Bermuda grass, if we didn't like do it, we till a perimeter around every field throughout the season, or the Bermuda grass just from the road would take like a month to get halfway into the field.
So I was wondering, in the year 2019, when your phosphorus is like pretty high at about like 160, is this still when like your soil is adjusting to no longer adding chicken litter to it, and like you're just seeing everything kind of stick for a little bit longer? Or were you guys still making certain implementations?
That was the year that we were applying organic fertilizer mixes from Midwestern BioAg. Yeah. And they were taking our soil test and they were creating a mix based on our soil test.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Like moving provided the best result when compared to tilling for the cover crops, or which one is good?
I'm so sorry, I cannot
Yeah.
hear great.
For the cover crops, you said moving. So whether the tillage works better or the moving of the cover crops, because it will be keep on growing again and again, right? So which one is better?
Removing the cover crop or tilling the cover crop?
Yeah. Which one works better?
I don't think you ever want to remove the cover crop, because it's like growing compost, basically. So you're just growing it and keeping it there. Whether or not you just mow it and incorporate it, or mow it and leave it, and then direct till right into it again, that's like what we are starting to experiment with. But I mean, plenty of studies have shown that you need to incorporate a cover crop to get maximum benefits, but you get a trade-off at the same time as well in terms of your soil structure and soil microorganism health. So, I mean, I'm not a soil scientist, so I don't know what that trade-off pans out in terms of like actual data. But I think really it's like, I know this sounds awful, maybe, but I think it's what you experience and see on your own farm. The results are your income, your yield, your health of your crop.
Any cover crops that you've dabbled in that you would caution against?
I
And
would have
why?
said rye a few years ago, but now with climate change, so yeah, we've started growing rye and appreciating rye again, because we'd grown it in the past. I really like foxtail millet because it grows super quickly and it will like absolutely grow on no moisture. The only downside is you have got to be on top of it. You cannot let that thing produce like even one seed head, because it becomes like a crazy mess if you do. I really like the forage oats, but again, they were kind of hit or miss because some of them would winter kill and some of them wouldn't. And it just stinks when you're trying to like spring kill your cover crop and it turns into a weed.
Do you use VNS rye, like variety non-specific, or do you have a specific variety of rye that you like to use?
Yeah, variety non-specific. We don't, I mean, we just a winter rye. Like we're not getting like in the depths of, we are getting much more in the depths of like our summer cover crop varieties. Those are way more specific, but no, not for the winter cover crop. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, so we have about 2.5 to 3 acres in cash crops each year between like spring and summer crops. And then we have the same amount in like the cover crop fallow, so like the rest period with the cover crop. And that just like alternates, depending upon which section of the field. But I mean, we've grown up to 7 acres in one season, and we've grown as little as 1 acre just throughout like our years. But this is what we've settled on as our best like mix. And we don't want to work like too much. So especially after we had a kid, like working 14-hour days was no longer cool. So when we try to work kind of like, 7 to 4-ish during our harvest days and less on our other days. So we are making a trade-off for income for time, but for us, like the time is more valuable than the money. And we are making a trade-off because we're growing our cover crop instead of trying to grow like fall or even winter crops, which we totally could. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have 2 questions for you. One, do you happen to have any guesses as to what happened with your phosphorus between 2021 and 2022?
No idea what happened to our phosphorus. No idea.
Okay.
And what's funny is like, if you go by the soil test alone, you might think you needed to apply phosphorus, right? But we didn't. And then look what happened. I mean, that's what's interesting about having applied like nothing at all, other than like from at least for the last like 5 years, like nothing. And you're just like, okay, what the heck is up with that? So yeah, I don't know.
Wait, could I ask one
Oh,
more?
yeah.
Sorry. Have you noticed a difference in the taste between your cash crops from when you started this to now?
That's such an interesting question because we have CSA members that have been with us like the entire time we've been farming. And every year they're like, this is your best year ever. And I'm like, well, it couldn't be because, or this is the tastiest year ever. And I don't really know, like they seem happy, but then every year somebody has a different take on it. I think, if it's really rainy that year, your flavor is totally going to go down. And like, you don't have any control over that. Your tomatoes are going to be watery and, it's not the same. But I do think that they still taste great. I don't know, but it's hard to say, like that's so subjective, but yeah.
So with your soil test results, this is the results from one field over the course of many years.
Yeah.
Do you see similar numbers in other fields, especially, your organic matter is consistent, but like, for example, that 2024 nitrogen, do you see those numbers being duplicated?
Yeah.
Because that nitrogen just seems like a very anomalous result, and I can't say if it was just a matter of sample preparation or if an actual testing mistake.
Right.
But I am a soil scientist, and that's just
that's something
that's an
isn't right
anomaly.
there. Yeah, something's not right there. That's a good question. So we have 2 other fields that each get, and I just chose one to tally it into because I thought all 3 might be too much for everyone, but you're welcome. I'll totally go home and do it if anybody wants to see it. No, that I can't recall. Certainly on one of the other fields, that high nitrogen number wasn't present, but I will look after this session on my phone in my files, and it'll tell me what the number was. We collect the samples. We do them in cross section, but yes, we do collect them.
Forgive me if you said this, but there's no plots that you're just doing winter kill cover crops? Like there's no plot that you're only planting the oats and the other things that you talked about that winter kill?
Yes. Okay.
And just with nothing that's going to overwinter, in other words.
No.
Like,
Say that one more time. Sorry.
So, yeah, forgive me. So there's no plots that you're just growing a winter kill cover crop that dies and then you immediately plant it into it in the spring. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, like in our fallow cover crop area, like it goes from the winter cover crop, gets killed, and then goes into the summer cover crop that year. Like it doesn't get a cash crop. Is that what you mean?
No, I guess I mean like what we'll do often is we'll plant like peas and oats in the fall, for instance.
Okay.
We'll let that die over the winter, and then we're immediately planting into that in the spring.
Into the residue.
Correct.
And not.
Or we'll rake it off if need be. Yeah, correct. It's immediately ready to go. So there are no plots that you're sort of doing that with, or you, because it seemed like you were mixing it, some of those winter kills like the daikon and the, what was the other one, the oats and that sort of thing, in with your vetch, etc.
Right. No, we don't have anything that just fully winter kills because we want the nitrogen from the vetch and we want the green cover. Like we have done that in the past where we had just total winter kill, especially if we got like a really tall, lush, early oat crop and then it formed this great mat. But what we found is we have such a long period from when we plant it in September to when we're planting the cover crop in September to when we plant like the next thing comes spring, that even like the greatest amount of biomass breaks down too much over the course of the winter and we get some soil exposure and we are trying to avoid that. But that's a good thought.
All right. Thank you, Emily, so much.
You guys.
I had a great idea, which is we never get good audience pictures. It's always people staring at the front. So can everybody say hello?
Thank you guys so much. And yeah, thank you.
Please remember to fill out your surveys. Let us know what is good and what you want in the future.